Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star Atlas Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 117. Any articles or videos mentioned can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Just look for news recap number 165. So just a quick summary of things to go over. A few content creators put out some updates. There was the biggest news of the week, which was the Star Atlas team released their latest patch for the UE5 version of Star Atlas. So they talked about that both on the Atlas Brew and on the Medium article. And then I'll go over my kind of state of Star Atlas for the past week and how I'm playing Star Atlas. But before I get to that, just want to talk about a couple projects I'm working on within Star Atlas. The first, of course, is my website, intergalacticherald.com. It's a great place for different resources related to Star Atlas. I have lists of things like directories of Star Atlas builders and other content creators. I have a beginner's guide. It's a little bit outdated, but there is a guide to some of the Star Atlas guilds. So again, you can check that out at intergalacticherald.com. I do have my merch store for Star Atlas merch. It's at intergalacticgear.com. Open for business, only selling mugs. But I do have a merch store over there, and I'd love if you would give me any feedback on some merch you'd like to see. And then finally, I am trying to get started a Star Atlas community just for gamers. So again, people that are not interested in joining a guild, but nevertheless still want to hang out and don't find the Discord server because it's more kind of chat-based, but would like to have more kind of discussions. And you can get email alerts when topics that are of interest to you or discussions that are of interest to you, so you can be much more asynchronous and not just a real-time chat. Please check out intergalacticcoalition.com, and there is an interest survey there. So as far as the content this past week, there was a number of updates, partly because we did have some updates from Star Atlas, which I'll get into later. But Beyond the Horizon did a massive recap on things that have been changed in Star Atlas the last few weeks, or even probably a month. Metaverse Explorer did another update on some things. And welcome back to the Metaverse Nomads. They used to have a very regular Sunday broadcast live stream. Apparently there was some stuff changed within their guild. They are members of the Rome Guild. So I guess there was some change in structure, and that caused some unfortunate things to disappear and things like that. But they've decided to relaunch their podcast. Not sure. They said they're not sure on a definitive schedule, but they hope to have once a month, and they had some new hosts. Definitely was a great also recap because they were going through lots of things that have changed. So again, those are three great recaps that occurred. Recaps and Star Atlas updates. You can find links to all those if you go to my website, intergalacticherald.com. Just look for news recap number 165. So I mentioned at the top, the biggest news this past week was that Star Atlas did release a new update to the UE5 Unreal Engine 5 version of the game, sometimes called the showroom. Lots of changes, tons of details from updating. Oh boy, there's just too much. But again, you're not really here to hear the recap, more to find things. There's a couple different ways you can check that out. One, they did publish their patch notes on a Medium article from their account, so you can check that out. Again, check out my recap. They had an Atlas Brew where they went over pretty much the same thing that was in there. They also did some things that weren't. One was a big update to how mining now works. That was a work in progress a couple patches back, but they've added more. They had one of the game designers on there showing it. So again, it was different between ship size and asteroid or resource size and how all that worked. And then at the end, they went through some of how the shooter arenas have been improved, both with textures and some other things like that. Additionally, then the Atlas Brew and the Medium article, the community team has restarted the YouTube channel. So there was also a patch video there, but this was actually on the official Star Atlas channel, not one of the individual team members' channels. So yeah, a big update. Hope to finally get into it now, but I know I say that every month when there's a new patch. But again, a lot of different things, and I'll get into kind of some of the updates and my thoughts on that in a second. That was, again, the bulk of the content that came out this past week. So moving on to my state of Star Atlas, obviously talking about the UE5 patch. I do think it's very impressive. They have maintained this kind of fairly consistent upgrade. I think it was like, this is the third or fourth. I think they were talking about kind of having a 1 month cadence. So they've definitely done that. They alluded to a bigger update maybe coming in July. So maybe they won't have one in June. Again, they're known to mention and tease things coming up, but we'll see. There were a lot of great updates. I think the polishing and upgrading the different parts of the shooter components, both the environment, and I think they introduced a real gun. I guess they were using a placeholder. I'm not sure I understand on game design, but anyways, it was cool. It's a shotgun. Yay. But I think the one thing that really stood out to me And something I've been mentioning even from last year when we had the first kind of large multiplayer test using the Metagravity technology, they have moved to use the Unreal or the Epic multiplayer. So I guess people who design on the Unreal Engine, which is made by Epic Games, there is some built-in multiplayer technology. Again, we can call that traditional, as opposed to the idea of the blockchain and whatever the technology that Metagravity is trying to do for very large environments. But again, we haven't seen that yet. And there has been lots of desire to have some sort of ability to do multiplayer. And there was the ability to start your own server, for lack of a better term. However, I guess whoever started the server had an unfair advantage because the server's running on their computer. So this idea of dedicated servers is basically when you get enough people, I think they said it was 4, then a server will be built and then you can play, but it's hosted somewhere, either local to you or central. I'm not 100% sure on the technology, but that kind of levels the playing field. Plus, it makes it that you can basically jump in and jump out if somebody else is also hosting a game that you may not know about. So definitely a long time coming, but definitely warranted. I think it really helps now with the idea of the esports angle and people wanting to play. So I think just having this will allow for more constant interaction. The community team said they will be hosting, I think, a Friday night, I'm not sure which time zone, community thing, an end of week thing where the team gets together and then of course anybody else can join. So I think that's actually a really cool activity to put on and definitely a good community building thing. Yeah, again, there were lots of updates to the play, but again, I think to me the dedicated servers really stands out as the big one. I know, I say, if you listen a while, I say I'm always going to get into it, but this one finally feels like, okay, now finally I can maybe just on my time and somebody else is playing and you go play for a few minutes, which definitely is much more of a way to have ongoing engagement. So that's all I have to mention, but of course that was all that was to mention this week, so it was a pretty big change. Moving on to my last segment, kind of my journey, playing Star Atlas. Again, I want to get more into the showroom, UE5 version, but I've been playing Sage. My goal is to get a Mamba X, so I've been working toward mining and moving all the resources. I'd been moving carbon back to the Central Space Station, which is what you need to do to craft the ship. Been slowly making progress. Let me actually check my notes, see where I'm at, because I think I finally hit some milestone. What was it? Oh, I got under 20 million. So it just got finally through the 2s, and now I'm into the 1900s. So definitely feel like I'm on not totally the end game, but it seems like 500,000 moves every 12 hours or something. So again, that might be closer. But I ran out of fuel, so I had to stop, take that fleet, and do a whole bunch of mining for hydrogen to convert it to fuel. So I had to take a break, but it's back out, moving stuff back. I did go ahead, I mentioned a few weeks back, got the itch and bought one of the Armstrong Imp tips, so the smallest miner ship, and was mining iron ore. And as of this morning, it completed the goal, and I needed, checking my notes again, I think it was 6,200,000, and I hit that. So I'm just going to let that one keep going because I don't have time to stop and figure out the next place to go. But once it runs out of ammo or fuel or food or whatever it is, I guess it's ammo. No, it's not ammo. Sorry, check notes again. Food, run out of fuel. Food. When it runs out of food, then I'll figure out the next place to go. But I remembered I had a note that with the upcoming C4 release, which is going to drastically change the map, this is probably the time to be a little strategic in the sense of to go and mine for the Mamba X, the resources that are the furthest away, which means they're in the either high or medium risk zone. I'm not sure if anything's in the high zone, but anyways, the things that are further away. So I think I'm going to go and send my miner out to that furthest away one because that is the most dangerous place if combat actually occurred, and have it start mining. Now, the good thing is the way I was doing it before was I was doing the biggest ones first, so I'm not really sure. I got to go back to my notes. It was literally months ago I did all these calculations. But anyways, I think that makes a lot of sense given that we know a game update is coming. And worst case, I could sell it at the local market and just take it a loss, if assuming somebody's willing to buy it at a cheap price out there. But we'll cross that bridge when I get to it. So anyway, so that's my next goal on that. And then mine all those, and then as soon as I start mining, now I think about it, maybe I should stop moving the carbon and go move that other resource, because the carbon is in a safe zone. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. So anyways, much to think about. Anyway, feeling like I'm making more progress, but partly it's because the amount of resources are in the millions as opposed to tens of millions. Carbon was like, I think, 72 million or something. Definitely want to re-up, or definitely making more progress when not having to, what am I trying to say? Yeah, do really large mining things. So anyway, so I'm going to do a little recalibrating of the strategy to work on the farthest things first and at least get those all mined, and whether or not I move them all back in that reverse order. It feels like that's something I should do too. But anyways, I'll take a look at all that. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing there. I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm totally open if anybody wants to be a guest on the podcast, open to other content creators, other community members who want to talk about the Week in Review, and of course, any team members. Again, just want to highlight the projects I'm working on within StarAtlas. Of course, you can go to my website, intergalacticherald.com. Got a lot of resources there, especially my beginner's guide and directories of other StarAtlas content creators or builders or tools and things like that. Please check out my merch store for StarAtlas at intergalacticgear.com. Just have a few mugs, working on wall art, but I do a merch survey there. And lastly, if you're interested in joining other StarAtlas gamers who don't want to join guilds, please check out intergalacticcoalition.com. Got an interest survey there. Hoping to build a community. It'll be on a different platform than Discord, one that's more suited for discussions and getting alerts. Do mention that this will be paid community, but that's to help offset the cost of the software. So check that out at intergalacticcoalition.com. So hope you enjoyed everything in the week in review of StarAtlas. Hope you have a good week ahead. This is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald.